The hip-hop world woke up to tension nobody expected. Cardi B was trending again, loud, unapologetic, firing back at critics the way she always has. But this time felt different. The reactions weren't just coming from fans, they were coming from veterans. And when Snoop Dogg stepped in with what sounded like a calm but firm message, the energy shifted immediately. He didn't rant, he didn't disrespect her, he didn't even go viral for drama. But the tone? It felt like a warning. Cardi has built her brand on being raw and unfiltered. That personality turned her into a superstar. She says what she feels and doesn't back down. Her supporters call it authenticity. Her critics call it reckless. But when a legend like Snoop speaks in a measured voice about behavior and protecting your name, people pay attention. Or then old 50 Cent interviews started resurfacing. Clips where he warned about ego, fame, and how fast the industry can flip on you. At the time, it sounded like general advice. Now fans are replaying those words and asking if this was the exact moment he meant. Is this about respect? About industry politics? About protecting hip-hop's image? Or is something happening behind the scenes that the public hasn't fully seen yet? Because in hip-hop, messages aren't always loud. Sometimes they're subtle, and sometimes they're warnings. To understand why this moment feels heavy, you have to understand the personalities involved. Cardi B didn't come into the industry quietly. She came in loud, bold, and impossible to ignore. From reality TV to chart-topping hits, she built her empire by being transparent about everything. Her struggles, her relationships, her anger, her wins. Fans feel like they know her. That emotional connection is her power. But it also means every reaction she has becomes headline material. In today's social media era, artists aren't just musicians. They're personalities running 24/7 live broadcasts of their thoughts. Cardi mastered that formula early. When critics attacked her, she attacked back. When rumors spread, she responded immediately. No PR filter, no waiting, just raw reaction. And that works until it doesn't. Because hip-hop has layers. There's the public-facing culture, and then there's the veteran code. Respect for elders, strategic silence, knowing when to respond and when to let something die. That's where artists like Snoop Dogg come in. Snoop isn't just a rapper. He's survived multiple eras of hip-hop. The 90s West Coast wars, our label politics, public controversies, reinvention after reinvention. He's stayed relevant without constantly being at the center of chaos. That's experience talking. So when someone like Snoop sends what feels like a strong message, fans immediately interpret it as mentorship or correction. His tone didn't feel emotional. It felt intentional. Almost like someone who has seen artists lose everything because they reacted instead of calculated. Then there's 50 Cent. 50 built his career on conflict, beef, controversy, power moves. But behind that aggressive image is someone extremely strategic. He understands branding, he understands narrative control, and in multiple past interviews, he warned about how fame can inflate ego. He talked about how the same fans who hype you today can turn on you tomorrow. He explained how the industry sometimes waits for artists to make mistakes. When those old clips resurfaced during Cardi's latest controversy, people started connecting dots. Was 50 indirectly referencing situations like this years ago? Is this what he meant when he talked about emotional discipline? Or are fans just building a storyline because the timing looks dramatic? What makes this more intense is how quickly the internet escalates tension. A single comment becomes beef. A subtle remark becomes shade. A general statement becomes a diss. Reaction channels analyze facial expressions. Blog posts exaggerate tone. Suddenly, what might have been advice feels like confrontation. Cardi's supporters argue that she's being unfairly judged. They say male rappers can be aggressive without backlash. But when Cardi speaks passionately, she's labeled problematic. They see Snoop's message as unnecessary policing of her personality. On the other side, Critics say growth matters. They argue that once you reach a certain level, emotional control becomes part of your responsibility. They believe Snoop's message wasn't an attack, it was protection. A reminder that the higher you rise, the harder the fall can be. And then there's the industry politics layer. Some insiders have long claimed that behind-the-scenes relationships matter more than public talent. Labels, executives, long-standing alliances. When a superstar moves unpredictably, it doesn't just affect fans, it affects business. That's why 50's resurfaced warnings feel significant to some viewers. He's spoken before about how the industry can quietly freeze artists out, how support can disappear without announcement, and how doors close silently. There is no confirmed feud between Snoop and Cardi, no verified evidence of backstage drama, no official warning issued. But emotionally, something shifted. Because when veterans speak at the same time younger stars are trending for controversy, it feels coordinated, even if it isn't. This isn't just about one comment or one viral clip. It's about hierarchy in hip-hop. It's about how the culture balances authenticity with discipline. It's about whether being real means saying everything you feel, or knowing when not to. And right now, fans are watching closely to see what happens next. Because if Cardi doubles down, it could escalate. If she stays silent, people will say the message landed. And if 50 decides to weigh in directly, that's when things could truly explode. The real conflict isn't just about one comment or one viral clip. It's about control. Control of image, control of narrative, control of the culture. When Cardi B went live and responded to criticism with her usual fiery energy, most people expected the moment to fade in 24 hours. That's how social media works. A flare-up, a few headlines, then the next trending topic replaces it. But this time, it didn't fade. Because shortly after, Snoop Dogg appeared to address behavior in the industry, speaking about maturity, about moving smarter, about protecting your legacy. He didn't name Cardi directly in a confrontational way, but the timing was too precise for fans to ignore. Within hours, blogs framed it as a response, reaction channels labeled it a check, comment sections exploded. The tension formed in the space between what was said and what people assumed was meant. And here's where the first big twist hits. This might not be about disrespect at all. It might be about positioning. Cardi is at a level now where every move impacts more than just her fan base. Brand partnerships, festival bookings, corporate deals, international markets. The higher the platform, the tighter the scrutiny. Snoop understands that game better than most. He has navigated corporate America, mainstream media, and hip-hop authenticity without losing relevance. So, some insiders believe his message wasn't a warning. It was a reminder. A reminder that the industry doesn't just watch talent, it studies behavior. Emotional outbursts can be entertaining, but they can also become liabilities when the stakes are high. And when a superstar appears unpredictable, corporate power quietly reassesses risk. That's where 50 Cent's resurfaced interviews start to feel less random. In past conversations, 50 talked about how quickly alliances shift in entertainment. He described how success can create blind spots, how artists sometimes believe they're untouchable until support disappears overnight. He wasn't speaking about Cardi specifically, but the pattern he described sounds familiar to longtime observers of the industry. Here's the twist no one expected. What if Snoop's message wasn't about calling Cardi out? What if it was about protecting her before the industry decides to discipline her? That possibility flips the narrative. Instead of veteran versus younger star, it becomes mentor versus storm. Because behind the scenes, consequences in music don't always come with public announcements. They show up quietly. A collaboration that never happens. A tour slot that disappears. A brand deal that doesn't renew. No headline. Just silence. And silence in entertainment can be louder than controversy. Fans are divided because they're interpreting tone differently. Some hear correction, others hear concern. Some hear shade, others hear strategy. Meanwhile, Cardi hasn't directly addressed Snoop in a combative way. That restraint is interesting. If she felt attacked, her history suggests she would respond immediately and loudly. The absence of a direct clapback could mean one of two things. Either there's no real tension, or the message landed privately. Then there's the 50 Cent factor. 50 has always been a chess player in a checkers world. He understands public perception. He knows how to stir conversation without fully stepping into the fire. If he chooses to speak directly about this situation, it won't be accidental. It will be calculated. Right now, he hasn't escalated it publicly. And that restraint adds another layer of intrigue. Because when powerful voices choose not to speak, that silence becomes its own statement. Another layer to this conflict is generational energy. Hip-hop evolves every decade. The new wave values transparency and emotional immediacy. The old guard values strategy and controlled power. Neither side is wrong, they just operate differently. Cardi's strength is her rawness. Snoop's strength is his composure. 50's strength is his foresight. When those three energies intersect in the same news cycle, it creates narrative electricity. Here's where things become even more interesting. Some fans believe this entire moment is being amplified beyond reality, that there may be no real issue at all, just commentary inflated by social media. In the modern era, a single vague statement can be weaponized into a storyline for clicks. That's the other twist. What if there is no beef? What if the internet built a confrontation that doesn't exist because no diss track has dropped? No explicit call-out has been made, no public argument has occurred. Yet the narrative feels real. That's the power of perception. In today's culture, perception can create conflict where none was intended. It can turn advice into accusation. It can turn mentorship into rivalry. But here's what makes this moment critical. If Cardi ignores it and continues as usual, the story fades. If she responds emotionally, the story escalates. If Snoop clarifies, it neutralizes tension. If 50 steps in directly, it explodes. This isn't about one rant anymore, it's about trajectory. Cardi is at a crossroads where longevity matters more than viral moments. Snoop is at a stage where legacy protection matters more than clout. And 50 operates in a space where he studies power dynamics carefully. The first big twist isn't that someone is being exposed. It's that this might be a turning point. Either this becomes a forgotten headline, or it becomes the moment people look back on and say, that's when the shift started. Because in hip-hop, the loudest battles aren't always fought with diss tracks. Sometimes they're fought with tone, and right now the tone feels deliberate. What should have cooled down didn't. Instead of fading, all the conversation intensified. Bloggers started reaching out to sources. Reaction channels uploaded breakdown after breakdown. Clips were slowed down, captions added, dramatic music layered underneath simple statements. The narrative was no longer just about what Snoop said. It was about what he meant. And meaning is where escalation lives. Fans began analyzing Cardi's recent behavior beyond the original viral moment. Interviews, tweets, past rants, even live performances were re-examined under a new lens. The question shifted from was Snoop talking about her to has this been building for a while? At the same time, subtle industry patterns started getting attention. A rumored collaboration that never materialized. A public event where certain artists didn't interact. A comment here. A missed cosign there. None of it confirmed as drama, but enough for the internet to construct a storyline. Then came the second major twist. Some insiders began suggesting that this isn't about Cardi at all. It's about control of the next era. Hip-hop is in a transitional phase, streaming dominance, brand partnerships outweighing record sales, artists becoming independent powerhouses. The old guard built the culture, the new wave monetizes it differently. That shift naturally creates tension. Not personal tension, but structural tension. If Cardi represents the new model, emotionally direct, internet-driven, unfiltered, and Snoop represents legacy stability and strategic longevity, then this moment symbolizes more than two personalities. It symbolizes two philosophies. But here's where it flips again. What if the veterans aren't pushing back? Or what if they're testing? Testing how the next generation handles pressure. Testing whether emotional reactions turn into strategic moves. Testing whether public outbursts evolve into calculated branding. Because make no mistake, in entertainment, pressure reveals hierarchy. The second twist is that this situation may be less about discipline and more about observation. Veterans often watch before they act. They see how a superstar navigates backlash. Do they self-correct? Do they escalate? Do they double down? Or do they adapt? Cardi's silence towards Snoop specifically is interesting. Historically, she doesn't hesitate to respond if she feels disrespected. The absence of a fiery clapback could signal maturity, or it could signal private communication happening behind closed doors. And that possibility changes everything. Because if there were private conversations, mentor to artist, legend to superstar, then what the public is seeing might only be the surface. Now layer 50 Cent back into this. 50 understands industry chess better than almost anyone. He knows how to let tension build without stepping into it prematurely. If he senses instability, he can either amplify it or neutralize it with one calculated statement. So far, he hasn't escalated. That restraint suggests something important. This might not be war. It might be alignment in progress. But here's the dangerous edge. If the internet keeps framing this as confrontation, even neutral energy can become defensive. And once defensiveness enters the equation, real tension can form where none originally existed. That's how escalation happens in modern hip-hop. Not always through direct conflict, but through narrative pressure. Then there's the corporate side. Major brands are hyper-aware of online sentiment. If a superstar trends too frequently for controversy instead of music, risk assessments happen quietly. No dramatic announcement, just careful recalibration. The industry doesn't publicly punish. It slowly shifts investment. Snoop has seen that process happen to others. 50 has seen it too. Which brings us to the second major twist. What if this entire moment is less about personality and more about sustainability? Cardi has already proven she can dominate charts. The question now is longevity. 10 years from now, will she still be commanding rooms the way Snoop does? Will she have navigated controversies without burning bridges? This could be a crossroad moment disguised as drama. And here's the wild card. If Cardi transforms this moment into growth, calmer responses, strategic silence, controlled messaging, she levels up. The narrative becomes evolution. If she reacts explosively to perceived criticism, the narrative becomes instability. That's the fork in the road. And right now, the entire industry is watching to see which direction she takes. Because the second twist isn't that someone is being exposed. It's that this might be a quiet initiation, a test of whether superstardom can transition into legacy. And the result of that test will determine whether this was just another viral headline, or the beginning of a new chapter in hip-hop power dynamics. Once the narrative reached mainstream blogs, the fallout became bigger than Snoop, Cardi, or 50. It became about sides. Fans split almost instantly. Cardi's supporters defended her authenticity, arguing that her emotional transparency is exactly why she connects with millions. They said trying to tone her down would mean erasing the very personality that built her empire. To them, Snoop's message, even if subtle, felt like an unnecessary critique of a woman who refuses to shrink herself. On the other side, longtime hip-hop fans sided with the veterans. They argued that evolution is part of greatness, that every legend had to learn emotional control at some point, that longevity requires discipline. To them, Snoop wasn't attacking, he was guiding. And if Cardi is truly aiming for legendary status, moments like this are part of the journey. The divide wasn't just generational, it was philosophical. Should artists stay raw no matter the consequences? Or should they adjust once the stakes get higher? Reaction channels amplified the tension daily. Headlines framed it as OG versus superstar. Comment sections became battlegrounds. Even neutral observers were pulled into debates about respect, ego, and growth. But here's where the emotional fallout deepened. Some fans started projecting larger narratives onto the situation. They connected it to gender dynamics in hip-hop. They questioned whether male artists receive more tolerance for public outbursts. They debated double standards. The conversation expanded beyond one moment and became symbolic of broader industry issues. At the same time, corporate watchers stayed quiet. Brands rarely engage in public drama, but they monitor sentiment carefully. Cardi is not just an artist. She's a brand partner, a business investment. She's a global ambassador for products and platforms. When online sentiment becomes polarized, boardrooms notice. And that's where emotional fallout meets financial reality. Even without any confirmed conflict, perception alone can influence opportunity. Meanwhile, Snoop's position remained steady. He didn't escalate. He didn't clarify aggressively. He didn't retract. That composure reinforced his image as a veteran who speaks once and lets the culture interpret. And 50 Cent? Still watching. The absence of a direct 50 reaction became part of the story. Fans expected him to jump in with humor or a sharp comment. The fact that he didn't intensify speculation. Was he choosing neutrality or waiting for the right moment? The emotional divide revealed something deeper about hip-hop today. The culture is no longer unified in how it defines strength. For some, strength is loud independence. For others, strength is strategic restraint. Cardi represents one side of that equation. Snoop represents the other. And the audience is deciding which philosophy feels more sustainable. Here's the uncomfortable truth. No diss track has dropped. No direct insult has been exchanged. No official feud has been declared. Yet emotionally, it feels like something happened. That's the power of modern narrative cycles. In previous eras, tension required direct confrontation. Today, it requires interpretation. Tone becomes ammunition. Timing becomes evidence. Silence becomes strategy. The fallout isn't about a fight. It's about perception of hierarchy. If Cardi continues thriving without adjusting her approach, critics lose leverage. If she stumbles publicly, they'll say the warning was justified. That's the emotional trap of this moment. Everything she does next will be interpreted through this lens. And the same goes for Snoop. If he supports her publicly in the near future, the tension dissolves. If distance remains, speculation grows. The divide has created anticipation, not of conflict, but of movement. Who will speak next? Who will clarify? Who will stay silent? Because sometimes the biggest shifts in hip-hop don't come from explosive beefs. They come from quiet recalibrations. Here's the final twist no one is fully talking about. What if this moment was never about Cardi's behavior at all? What if it was about transition? Every major artist eventually reaches a crossroads where raw talent isn't enough anymore. The conversation shifts from can they win to can they last. That shift is subtle but powerful, and sometimes the industry doesn't announce that transition. It tests it. Cardi is no longer the hungry newcomer proving herself. She's established, award-winning, globally recognized. That means the expectations change. The margin for emotional missteps gets smaller. The spotlight gets sharper. Snoop has already crossed that bridge. He survived controversy, reinvention, public scrutiny, and industry politics. He moved from rapper to cultural icon. He understands longevity in a way only time can teach. So here's the twist. What if Snoop's message wasn't aimed at correcting Cardi, but preparing her? Preparing her for the phase where one wrong move can shift perception permanently. Preparing her for the reality that once you become bigger than music, everything you do carries amplified consequences. And now layer 50 Cent into this. 50 has always operated like a strategist. He sees patterns before others do. His old warnings about ego and emotional reactions weren't personal. They were observational. He's watched stars rise and collapse. He's seen the industry embrace someone loudly and then quietly distance itself. If 50 steps into this conversation directly, it won't be emotional. It will be tactical. And that's the cliffhanger. Because right now, the situation sits in a fragile balance. Cardi hasn't escalated, Snoop hasn't attacked, 50 hasn't ignited it, which means this could go one of two ways. Option 1, it fades. Cardi continues dominating. The moment becomes a footnote in her evolution, a small checkpoint on the path to long-term legacy. Option 2, a reaction shifts the tone. A comment sparks a response. Pride enters the room, and what was once subtle becomes public friction. But here's the deeper cliffhanger. What if the real battle isn't between artists? What if it's between impulse and strategy? Cardi built her empire on impulse. Authentic, emotional, immediate. That energy made her powerful. But sustaining power sometimes requires strategic silence. Snoop mastered that. 50 weaponized it. Now the culture is watching to see which path Cardi chooses. Because hip-hop history shows something clearly. The loudest stars aren't always the longest-lasting ones. And when veterans start speaking in careful tones instead of loud ones, it usually means they've seen something coming. The question is, was this a warning, a mentorship moment, or the first ripple of a larger shift in hip-hop's power structure? The next move won't just define this moment, it could define legacy. Now it's your turn. Was this just a misunderstood moment blown up by the internet? Or did Snoop Dogg really send a subtle warning to Cardi B about how the game works at the highest level? Do you think 50 Cent saw this type of situation coming when he talked about ego and the industry flipping on artists? Or are fans reading too deeply into timing and tone? Hip-hop has always evolved through tension, through mentorship, through quiet corrections and loud statements. But this moment feels different because it's not built on diss tracks or direct insults. It's built on interpretation. And interpretation shapes reputation. So what do you think this really was? A veteran protecting the culture? A legend preparing a superstar for longevity? Or just social media, turning subtle advice into manufactured drama? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, but keep it respectful. These are real artists with real careers and real legacies at stake. If you want more breakdowns that go beyond headlines and actually analyze the power dynamics behind what's happening in hip-hop, make sure you subscribe right now. Hit the like button so this conversation reaches more people. And share this with someone who thinks this is just drama, because sometimes the quiet moments say more than the loud ones. The next move will tell us everything.